What's up, everybody? Peter Exodus Okafor here, doing another episode here for the Level Up video show. And today we're doing Michael Jackson, the King of Pop. In season one of Level Up, the podcast, I did touch on Michael. I think in branding gone bad, but I'm going to do a more balanced look at Michael in this episode. As I said in the podcast show, I'm going to say it now. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not getting into all the legal stuff. And I'll just say, Michael was charged once and had a trial and was acquitted. And I know Finding Neverland came out after he passed. I'm not going there. It's about music and branding, and yeah, that's a part of Michael's brand, unfortunately, but he's doing pretty well considering. Um, so, um, so yeah, I'm not going there. Everybody can make their own, do their own research and make their own judgment on that issue. His music's still doing very well, so. We're never gonna know. I don't want to, I know it's a serious issue for victims of sexual abuse. So again, I'll leave that question up to every viewer to kind of navigate for themselves. But Michael was a master brander. I mean, he coined, or crowned himself the king of pop, and it's stuck. Um, he had the silver glove. He had the beat it look, which was pretty. Uh, for those of you old enough to remember, that the black and white leather or the black and red leather from that video. He wasn't the only one wearing that jacket. That was pretty. Hey, and I haven't checked, but you can probably go on and get a jacket like that on Amazon. So not only that, but he branded his dance move, the moonwalk. I mean, he came up with that name, and it stuck and is kind of, when you think of the moonwalk, you think of Michael. And it's interesting, he sort of picked that up from Fred Astaire, and there were some other uh, from the 50s, but Fred Astaire supposedly did something like that. And I know I've seen another video on YouTube of a black dancer from the late 40s, early 50s doing the moonwalk as well. But Michael dug through that and found that years before YouTube. And he named it. So, hey, you know, you find something. I mean, you can't brand or you can't patent dances. So Michael found it. Nobody was aware of it. And it was years after where, we found out that he got it from Fred Astaire and that others had done it. So Michael found it and named it, and the rest is history. So in the 90s, Michael also did his military dress, and into the late 90s and early 2000s, he wore a mask, which was we thought was all weird, kind of weird at the time. Part of it I think was the fame and trying to disguise himself. But here, lo and behold, 2020 comes and we're all wearing masks. So I don't know. But that became a little bit of wearing the mask became a little bit of Michael's brand. So I'm going to do some quick reading here on Michael the numbers off of Spotify because despite all the controversy, Mike is still doing this thing. So Billie Jean, 1.2 billion streams. That's his only song in the Billionaire Club, and I don't know how many. There's maybe 120 songs in the Billionaire Club. Beat It, 778 million. Smooth Criminal, 496 million. Thriller, 438 million. Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, 372 million. Rock With You, 324 million. And Man in the Mirror, 367 million streams. So Mike's doing pretty good. Um, Actually, I think, his top end when it comes to streams might be a little better than the Beatles right now. So that, putting into perspective. And as I dive deeper into the channel, I'm gonna, talk about. I mean, you know, I'm already sort of dividing things. I just did um, an episode. I can't even remember if I've uploaded it, but I talk about the singles era and the album era, now the streaming era. And so I'm gonna get in that deeper, but it's and I'm also gonna talk legacies and branding at some point. And essentially, getting off topic here a little, but the Beatles aren't the biggest rock band in history anymore. I mean, it's Queen. Queen is passed up the Beatles when it comes to streaming, and it's because of millennials and Gen Z. So going forward, and I know this pisses boomers off to no end, but Queen's the king of rock and roll. I mean, it is, and because they're the folks under 40, they're going to pass their love of Queen on to their kids, and I know the boomers are hoping, well, these you know Gen Z millennial kids, hopefully they'll discover the Beatles, and the Beatles will rise back up and overtake Queen. But I don't see that. I mean, part of that, and I'll get into it later, but I think part of the rise of Queen is, it's more rooted in African American music than the Beatles. I mean, another one bites the dust. I mean, that's clearly funk, and um, and I know it's interesting because someone just this week has a an article on the Beatles and the Revolver album and how they wanted to go and record that at Stax. At the Stax in Memphis, their studio, and that was supposedly the Beatles' R&B soul album, which is interesting because no, it's not really R&B and soul, and it's certainly not Stax, and it's not even Motown. And I'm going to do season 2 of Level Up the podcast, where I'm going to do duels and trios, and one of them is sort of looking at the different branding between Motown and Stax. So yeah, I love Revolver, and when I do classic albums, Revolver is one of the albums I'm going to do, but it's not even close to being um, Stax or Motown. But anyway, I digress. I say that to say, Michael's doing very well despite, the controversies he's had. So yeah. So in the season 1 of the personal branding podcast, I have a whole episode called "Embrace Your Weird." But if you remember, I said be selective. Fortunately, Michael was not selective when it came to embracing his weird. He came off as being uh, nice guy and innocent, and really, I think to be nice, he was naive. To be nice, and we all know the story. He didn't have a childhood. It's kind of messed up. Michael had a very interesting relationship with the media, in that he really tried not to deal, at least one on one in front of cameras, with the media unless he had to. And usually it was, when he had legal problems, and it was desperation, and of course he famously said there's nothing wrong with sharing a bed with you know young boys. Well, I mean, is that the naivety of Michael, or is there something more nefarious there? Because Michael, I mean, if you dig deep into Michael, I mean, he didn't really have a childhood, and to say Michael knew he was sheltered, and clearly, I mean, basic stuff that we learned that most people learn that you just don't do. Michael was kind of oblivious to that, and he didn't have the best people around him that would say, "No, Michael, you don't do that. No, don't do that." And it's one of the trappings of fame. Um, you know, talked about this before. You have to empower people to tell you to knock it off, and to tell you no. And Michael clearly didn't do that. So yeah, so that's part of the whole thing. Be selective in embracing your weird. He had again did not have the best relationship and did not use the media very well. Now, Michael was notorious for slipping the media and the National Enquirer stories was between his music and because he wanted to still be out there in the public eye, so he fully embraced that old Barnum and Bailey saying that there's no such thing as bad publicity. Well, in Michael's case, he kind of flipped that on the head, and yes, there was. He got the nickname over from the tabloids in Great Britain as Wacko Jacko. He just went bananas with all the weird, the Elephant Man's bones, and sleeping in the hyperbaric, whatever that chamber was. I mean, he just went overboard with it and became so weird to people that they would believe anything that people will say, and when people just think you're out there and just totally weird, then they can make accusations, and so that's why you know a lot of people take the position like, hey, I don't know the answers to those controversial questions because Mike was weird as hell, and yeah, someone's gonna make those accusations, and so it kind of helps his music and legacy a little bit, but it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, the position he was put in by that. So, as a songwriter, musician, and artist, my favorite, I mean, everybody talks about um, Thriller and Bad. Well, my favorite, three favorite albums of Michael. The first one is Off the Wall. Because, that's his first, that's his independence. He's finally an adult. He's doing that really, his first album, and he's hungry. And it shows. And I love Off the Wall. It's more funkier and less pop than his other, his later stuff. Um, and really, I think that's what, going back to the Motown 25 special, which I saw live, remember that like it was yesterday. But Michael had that hunger, and that's why he kind of killed that performance. Because he knew that was his moment, and I just remember I was in a mostly white high school when that broke, and even the white kids were just like suburban white kids back then were just like, man, that was amazing, Michael Jackson. And so I remember that like it was yesterday, and was kind of blessed to be alive when Michael, and that performance really took him to the stratosphere. And it's ironic that he lip synced it and nobody cares even to this day. It was just so amazing. You can go to YouTube and watch and see the crowd's reaction when he moonwalks. It was like, what the hell was that? And that was everybody, that the crowd had the reaction, and everybody watching had that same reaction. But also, I love his stuff from the History album, his new stuff, and Blood and the Dance Floor, because I mean, Michael spent, outside of those two albums post Thriller, he really spent, the rest of his career trying to top Thriller, except those two albums. And then he was just like, okay, I'm dealing with some stuff and fame and everything else. And uh, this is what it's like. And he gets real, and it's kind of, you know, um, he gets raw at times, and it's no fun being Michael Jackson sometimes, and sometimes you got to go there. I mean, and to me, those two albums give his career gravitas, and so I like I like the other stuff and the songwriting and that other stuff, but Mike just kind of particularly uh, when he talks about his painkiller addiction. Um, in Blood on the Dance Floor. I mean, it's good stuff. And then he remixes a lot of the stuff from history and brings in electronic dance music, and it's just it's cool. It's amazing how he does it. So you get two versions of a lot of the history stuff. You get the history, and then you get the Blood on the Dance Floor stuff, and I think it's amazing how he did that. Prince would do that too. I'll get into that when I do, my Prince episode, which is coming up. But yeah, that's my favorite Michael stuff. So what's Michael's legacy? I mean, it's his music, and he's still putting up the numbers. And unfortunately, he lost track of the music and his weirdness, and trying to be relevant and get into National Enquirer and all these other tabloid magazines. He forgot what mattered, and that was his music. Unfortunately. But that's gone by the wayside. And as I read the numbers earlier, so he's still, it's the music that he's going to be remembered. Or that will stand the test of time. He's remembered for a lot of things, but I think the music, ultimately wins it for him. So yeah. So did Michael Jackson. I mean, he's a legend. But what can you say? So, short one, have to do Michael Jackson. I mean, come on, branding and you got to do Michael Jackson. I mean, the look, I forgot to mention, the military look he had in the 90s. Maybe I mentioned that, but, people getting his hair, and then you have, the weird super fans that get plastic surgery to look like Michael. Hey, whatever floats your boat. Hey, I'm good with it, but Mike has a strong brand. Period. So anyway, uh, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. I have a lot more coming. Uh, and yeah, got my own music on here, 4 albums here on YouTube and on the streaming channels. And I also have uh, 2 science fiction fantasy novels and a novella at Amazon under Peter Exodus Okafor. So check my other stuff out. Look at some of my other episodes. You'll probably see something there you'll find interesting, and I have more episodes coming. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next episode.